We're about to pull back the curtain on a fortune so huge it was kept secret for decades. And the whole story only came out because one insider, just one person, decided it was time to speak up. This is the story of the Mormon Church's incredible multi-billion-dollar empire.
So let's just start with the number itself. $236 billion. That's the estimated total wealth of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I mean, just let that number sink in for a second. It's almost hard to wrap your head around.
And to put that in perspective, because it's such a wild number, it's more than the combined value of Disney and Nike. Think about that. Two of the biggest, most iconic brands on the planet, and this fortune is bigger. And remember, this isn't a tech company or an oil dynasty. It's a church.
So, the big question, the one you're probably asking right now, is how on earth did they accumulate this much money? And maybe even more importantly, how did they keep it almost a complete secret, not just from the public, but from their own members for decades?
Well, that secret started to come apart back in 2019, and it was all thanks to this man, David Nielsen. He wasn't just some low-level employee. He was a senior portfolio manager at the church's super-secret investment firm, a place called Ensign Peak Advisors. So he had a front-row seat to all of it. So Nielsen goes and files a complaint with the IRS, and what he alleged was just explosive. He claimed the church had secretly stockpiled over $100 billion, and that it was actively misleading its own faithful members about where all their donation money was actually going.
And that really is the central mystery here, isn't it? How did a church, a religious organization, become an economic powerhouse that's richer than many countries? And how did they do it all behind closed doors? Well, let's break it all down.
Okay, so if you want to understand where this massive fortune comes from, you have to start at the very beginning, at the financial bedrock of the entire church, and that's a principle called tithing.
Now, tithing is a really simple idea, but it is incredibly powerful. The doctrine asks members to donate a full 10% of their income straight to the church. This is the primary river of cash that fuels absolutely everything else.
And here is the absolutely crucial part. For members of the LDS Church, tithing isn't just a friendly suggestion, it's a requirement. To be considered in good standing and to participate in the most sacred parts of the faith, like temple worship, you have to be a full tithe payer. And what that creates is what financial analysts call an exceptionally high compliance rate.
But you know, the church wasn't always this financial titan, not even close. Its journey from being on the brink of collapse to becoming a global empire is a really incredible story of strategy, smart pivots, and, as we're learning, a whole lot of secrecy. If you go way back, the church was actually bankrupt, but then Brigham Young leads the Mormons to Utah and builds this kind of theodemocracy, where religion and the economy were basically one and the same. Now, fast forward to the 1950s, and this is where a huge shift happens. The church stops running all these businesses and starts investing in them instead. That was a total game changer. It let them scale up, go global, and have way less risk. And all of that led to 1997 when they created Ensign Peak Advisors, the secretive firm right at the heart of the story. Okay, so that's the history of how they got here. But how does this incredible financial machine actually work today? How does it keep generating and growing so much money?
Well, you can really boil it down to these 5 pillars. First, you've got that steady, massive stream of cash from tithing, billions every year. Second, because it's a church, all that income and investment growth is almost entirely tax-free. Third, they don't mess around. They hire top-tier professionals to manage it all. Fourth, and this is huge, they reinvest almost everything, letting that money compound year after year, decade after decade. And finally, they buy up real, tangible stuff, land, buildings, resources that hold their value.
And the kind of stuff they own? I mean, it is just staggering. We're talking over $1 billion in Apple stock alone. Huge stakes in Google, Amazon, Microsoft. They own a $2 billion shopping mall in Salt Lake City, the biggest cattle ranch in the entire United States. Oh, and hundreds of thousands of acres of valuable farmland and timberland. It's a kind of portfolio a small country would be proud of. So as you can probably imagine, the fact that a church has this much money has kicked up a massive debate. Is this just responsible planning for the future? Good stewardship? Or is it a form of hoarding that kind of goes against the church's core mission?
When this story broke and the church had to respond, their official justification was, well, it was pretty extraordinary. They stated that this massive fund is essentially being saved for the second coming of Christ. It's a rainy day fund for the end of the world. So this sets up two completely opposite ways of looking at this whole thing. The church's view is that they're just being responsible, like the story of Joseph in the Bible storing up grain for a famine. But critics see it very differently. They say stockpiling billions while there are people in need goes against the teachings of Jesus, and that a tax-exempt charity should be way more transparent.
And to back up that argument, critics point to data like this. Now, these are estimates from analysts who've dug into the numbers, and they figure that only about 0.7%, that's less than 1% of the church's yearly revenue, goes to charitable aid. The overwhelming majority, as you can see, gets put right back into investments or other operations.
All of these revelations eventually got the government's attention. The SEC ended up fining Ensign Peak and the church a total of $5 million because they had used a bunch of shell companies to hide just how big their portfolio was.
But let's put that $5 million fine into context for a second. For an organization with $236 billion, that fine it's literally a rounding error. It's the same as a person with a net worth of $236,000 paying a fine of just $5. To a lot of people, it just felt like the cost of doing business.
And that brings us right back to the central question of this whole story, one that really gets to the heart of faith, finance, and trust. If you found out your church was sitting on $236 billion while still asking you to donate 10% of your income, would that make your faith stronger or would it make it weaker? It's a pretty fascinating question to think about.